I think perception for artists is a very scary thing, because they want to be perceived as something bigger on social media or whatever, and they're afraid to show the process, but the process is really where it's all born. Mm-hmm. And people don't believe that you just like upgraded to a mansion overnight. You know what I mean? They want to see you live in the double wide, and they want to see you get to the single rancher, and they want to see you get to the 4-bedroom house. They want to see that. You don't want to just see you in a mansion. What fun is that?
Well, and I think it makes there's more relationship built that way, because most of the people who make up a fan base for an artist, they didn't start out in the mansion. They started out in the double wide and moved up and, whatever. So it makes you relatable when you're showing the reality of your process. And I think your fans get to feel like they were the OGs.
He grew with you.
Yeah.
That's the win, right? That's the win. When people are crying because they saw you in a 50-person crowd, and now it's a 200-person crowd, and that you still remember them from that show.
Yeah. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. So we have Brandon Hart here today joining us. And Brandon has always been a natural storyteller. His music is a therapeutic journal of the soul. Brandon is an advocate for mental health, and he writes deep, hard-hitting lyrics about love, loss, addiction, and perseverance, set to upbeat, alt-rock, and pop anthems. His music is reminiscent of the 90s era he grew up in. Hart's music can be best described as teenage angst meets adult life. Earlier this year, Hart was part of a collaborative album titled As Far as the Stars with Tom Macdonald and Nova Rockafeller that placed on 18 different Billboard charts, including 2 number 1s, a number 3, and a number 4. Brandon recently released his newest album titled Worried Sick, including the release of 5 videos from the project, which have already received 800,000 views on YouTube in just 3 short months. Brandon has toured North America extensively and is building a large online following. He currently has 182,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So you want to tell us your story, flesh out the bio a little bit for our listeners who might not know who you are. Tell us a bit about who you are and your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today.
Sure. Bios, first and foremost, are like one of the weirdest things to have to write.
Aren't they?
Because you're like, how do I sum this up and not be corny at the same time? And I think I asked somebody else commented, Brandon's music can be described as teenage angst meets adult life. They commented it on one of my videos, and I loved that because I was like, that's a great summary of what my music is like.
Absolutely.
And then I sent it to a couple different friends. I'm like, what do you feel about like this quote going in my bio? And they're like, I don't know, man. And I was like, I'm keeping it. So I put it in there, and I think it's funny ultimately, but it does really describe the kind of music that I make.
I think it's both. I think it's great. I say keep it.
Yeah. It stayed in there, and it's made it on every cover sheet I've ever sent out. So
yeah.
About me, I've been making music in some form since like preteen years. Mm-hmm. But I think I knew I was meant to be a musician since I was 2 years old. My parents always tell me that was when I announced to them that that's what I was going to do. And, I used to, hold concerts in the basement at my parents' house that I grew up in Fort St. John, BC. And I'd bring everybody downstairs, and it would be whatever tape I was really big listening to. But I'd sit people on the couch, I'd put the tape on, and I'd sing along, and I'd put on concerts. So I think I've been doing that since I was 2. So, truthfully, the only thing that's ever really made sense to me is music. And here I am, umpteenth years later, still making it. I don't need to date myself, but,
none of us do. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the bio just talks a little bit about the big successes of the collaborative record last year, which was amazing. But I've been plugging away at this thing for a really long time, and still humbled and grateful that this is what I get to call a job most days.
Yeah, nicely said. So here on the Vocal Lab, we aim to sort of shine a light onto the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then.
Cool.
So with that in mind, if you were starting your career again over now, what would you do differently?
That in itself is probably one of the toughest questions to ask an artist, because there's a double-edged sword to it. Mm-hmm. Number one, if you could start again with all the knowledge you've gained from the stumbles and the mishaps and the bad experiences or things that you did poorly that could have probably been avoided, you would have the insight, but you wouldn't have the experience of going through them. And personally, I think that really shapes artists how they are. That story, the mess ups, the mishaps are really kind of where the character arc is in a human being, right?
Love that perspective. And I have to say, that's not one that I've heard from anybody else, but I think it's so valid.
Yeah. I think like a lot of people think by bypassing a mistake, their life would have been different, not knowing that like that mistake did change their life. It either changed it awful or it was like a drastic right turn where you weren't that person anymore. And I think it's like integral to growth. As a human being, first and foremost, to go through those things. So I don't know if I would change anything that I've gone through. I don't know if I physically would, because struggle, unsure, all of those things really kind of forged the fire that everything I do is built in. You know, I've learned so many things through the DIY process because I didn't have another option. You have two ways to pay for things, with your time or money. And if you don't have the money, then you got to pay with your time. And that means you got to learn how to do something yourself. That's why you start, you download a program that you can record yourself and you get the best mic you can afford. And then you learn how to make a 200 mic sound like a $2,000 mic. And all of those things come from not having the money to do it, but having the time to learn, because what's your other option? So yeah. I don't know if there's much I would change. And I think a lot of, especially my music too, like my music touches on some really heavy stuff, from mental health issues to anxiety, depression, to addiction, things like that. And, when I look back at all of those things, especially addiction, I know that me coming out of those things and being able to put it into words for other people who may be in a similar place I was then is integral. It's like I can't tell you how many times someone's written to me being like, that's it, I'm kicking drugs, or I don't want to be like this anymore. And all I can do is just write what happened and narrate my life as it unfolded. And the fact that can help somebody want to change their own because they can feel the comparisons between my life and theirs, where they're at, is important. So imagine if you erased all those things, you wouldn't get to help the people.
Yeah. And that's a pretty special place to be in. I think a lot of people really look to music for inspiration and that kind of thing. It fills a gap for people that isn't filled sometimes in their lives or in other art forms even. And I think it's a pretty special thing that when we have the privilege of sitting in that place.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of sitting in that place. Yeah. Because we have to be responsible with our words at the same time, because there's a lot of, for that same reason, music is mainly feel, right? For people that they don't have any other way to express themselves. They put on a song and they cry, or they put on a song and they laugh, or they put on a song and they dance, or they sit and think for hours. Music does that like sonic wave it is like kind of the pulse of being a human being, right? It's built into us. Like, where else can you put 10,000 people in a building without them arguing and put them and unify them to singing the same song lyric at the same time, no matter what background or what they are? It's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, we might have already covered it really, but especially knowing that you have done a really amazing job of what we might call sort of DIYing your career, which you can explain a little bit more sort of what that translates into. But first and foremost, what knowing that you've sort of DIYed your career and achieved some pretty amazing independent success, what do you feel you've done right in your career?
Well, first and foremost, I got to give credit where it's due. I didn't understand anything about DIY musicianship. I didn't understand even the tip of the iceberg of where to begin before I met my best friend, Tom Macdonald. And we've been working together for 10 years. And Tom is arguably the biggest independent artist in the world right now. And I learned so many things from him, and it was created for that exact reason that I spoke about from the beginning. You either pay with your time or you pay with money. And if you don't have money, then you pay with your time. And that was what Tom did. So Tom, when I met him, he was making the beat, writing the song, shooting a video, editing it, and releasing it all in one day. And he did that for 200 days straight.
Holy shit.
So when people talk about his work ethic now, he just released 2 albums yesterday, 34 songs. Nobody works at the level he does because that's just what he does. And it's not like he doesn't work from the fear of scarcity, or he doesn't work because he thinks he's going to lose relevance. He works because that's what he did. And for as long as I've known him, we lived together for years. We've toured together for almost a decade now. He's been my best friend for 10 years. That's who I did As Far as the Stars with as well. I learned all of those things from him because there was always something that could be done. If he wasn't writing a song, he was editing a song. If he wasn't shooting the video, he was editing the video. He literally was doing it all. And I guess through that, whereas before something would pop up and I'd be like, oh, I need to do this, but I need to go book studio time or something. I guess I just thought there was path A. I didn't realize there was path B, and B is, no, you don't get studio time. You save up your money, you buy a laptop, you get an audio interface, then you buy a microphone, and then you learn how to use it. And then you can start cutting your own vocals, and then maybe someone mixes them for you. All of that felt so foreign, mainly because I guess I never really understood that it worked like that. And I didn't know anybody who physically did it like that. So my whole DIY thing was taught and adapted to me through Tom. And I attributed it. I said to somebody the other day, a friend of mine, we were talking on the phone, and he said, like, you, Tom and Nova, just, you know how to do everything. Like, it's crazy. Like, all I can do is this one thing. And I was like, none of us were able to do these. Like, it's not like we were born with the skill. I didn't know how to edit videos or shoot videos before I needed to learn and know how. And I didn't know how to record and edit my own vocals before I needed to know how. Right. And I said, I compare it to this. You could drive a nice Ferrari down the highway. But if that Ferrari breaks down, it may be really fast. You could drive super fast from point A to point B. But if it breaks down, you're on the side of the road because you have no idea how to fix it. And we all drive a Honda Accord that we've been replacing radiator or hoses on. We've been, working on it for 10, 15 years. So if it breaks down, give me some duct tape, a little bit of glue, and I'll continue this thing down the road. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They don't believe that, oh, I need to make a design for my t-shirt. Then learn how to design.
Yeah.
There are so many tools available to you now as a young artist, as an old artist, as a whatever artist. There's no time like the present to take full control, because ultimately all of this is born from necessity, but also no one will care more about your product than you will. So being able to do all that, it just puts you in the driver's seat with it. So that DIY process, I need to give credit where it's due. I learned it from my best friend, and I'm still learning from him on a daily basis. And the work ethic, I just thought it was, I get to show up and write songs, and I didn't realize that that was 10% of what I really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, I think that it's a little bit of a side note there, but you said in the course of that, there are so many tools available now that frankly were not available when I was trying to make a go of things. You just didn't have, you want to design something, great. Everybody has access to Canva. You don't have to pay a cent for it. There are obviously different levels of design programs, but like everybody's got access to Canva. Loads of people have access to even just GarageBand or whatever. Like there are free, or Audacity or any of those. Like there are free programs that you don't even have to pay for the technology to start learning.
Absolutely.
That did not exist 30 years ago.
And I think, to be clear, like the DIY approach is so important for you to find your feet and find your voice and find who you are as an artist. I will in no way, shape or form take away from the incredible graphic designers that do amazing work or anything. And, I think there's a healthy balance between the two of them. But when you're starting out, people think I need $1 million studio and I need a U87. For those of you that aren't in the business, that's, like a Ferrari of microphones. Mm-hmm. They feel like they need all these things when really there's people that are, have #1 trending songs right now that they're recording on their iPhones.
Yeah.
So we live in a time where all this stuff is accessible to you. And I just think by learning it, like I always live by that, never ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. And I think by going through the motions of learning all these things, like if there's somebody that's editing the video and we're talking about something, I understand how to speak their language. I'm saying, well, it's actually this and it's got to work from this way. And I understand the problem before we're even in it, rather than being like, it's a mystery. How will this get solved?
I think that is so, so important. Even if you don't know actually how to do the job. And there's no doubt everybody has their areas of specialty. So if we're talking about going to an engineer, even like they're going to be better at it than you are, because that's their full-time 100%. Gig. Great. That, given. But going in and knowing how to speak their language, that is a step that I think really gets missed. Especially, when you're starting out and you don't know what you don't know. Right. So that component of I need to learn a little bit of everything, enough that I can communicate and be part of the process rather than just handing the reins over and seeing what comes out at the other end.
For sure.
That's a huge,
that's the big disconnect, right? Between, like if you were in any other trade, you would have to learn every step of it over a 4-year apprenticeship to understand the full spectrum of what you do. And musicians often come in and they do one thing good and nothing else. Yeah. And that's crazy, because think of how much better your mix is going to sound and how much more control you'll have over your recording session if you can ask the producer or engineer the proper terminology and understand it when you're saying, oh, it feels like there's a lot of compression on here. Understand what the compression does in the first place. You don't have to be a 20-year audio engineer to understand what compression is doing to your voice. Again, there's a healthy level there. Understanding to speak their language is respectful, and it allows them to get to the root of the problem quicker. Mm-hmm. There is a negative downside of people thinking they know more than the engineer. Yep. So there is a healthy balance. All I'm saying is, spend a bit of more time learning the other aspects of your craft, and then you're able to control those to ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these tools are just trying to get what's in your head closer to what it is in real life.
100%. Absolutely.
Nothing
and if you don't have the language to talk about it with all of the rest of the people that are involved in that process, then the chance of what's in your head ending up on the on the paper for like on the recording ending up being part of the final product, there's a much lower chance of that happening if you don't know how to translate what's in your head to the people working on it with you.
Of course, they can't. They're not in your head with you. They don't know how to make it unless you can speak it into existence and show them through actual tangible resources that they can go, oh, sure, that shirt that you're talking about, that specific fabric is cotton. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the one that feels like this shirt, kind of, not really. Just the more detail you can giving to experts, the closer they're going to be able to get you to it too, because they're an expert, not a mind reader, right?
Yeah. So
some are mind readers though.
Well, that's true. That's a special magic all their own.
Yeah. I'm just kidding.
I think the popular assumption has been for a lot of years that you write a song, you record it, you have a hit record, you get backing from a major label, and it's all cake from there, right?
Yeah.
But your journey has been different.
Fairy tale.
Yeah, right. That's the Cinderella version of the story.
I've heard myths of certain things happening like that. That's not how my world has worked. No.
So can you talk a bit about how you have pieced together an independent career that's been successful?
Yeah. I mean, again, my model is built off of a model that worked for someone who I spend a lot of time touring with. So again, I would have to attribute a lot of the success to Tom as well, because his fan base grew with me. As they grew with him, they met me at the same time. And I was fortunate enough to get the honor of playing for these people every single night and then getting to play with my best friend every night. So we would tour. I would sell all the merch from the second the door opened. Then I would open the show. Then I would usually come out through Nova's set sometimes because Nova has really bad asthma. So sometimes just to give her a little bit of a break in her set and just to have awesome fun, I would come out and do a song in the middle of her set in the first tours just to kind of give her a little break to catch up. And then I would do Tom's whole set with him every night. So, and then I'd go back to selling merch for the end of the night. So in that process of being on the road, I was able to really solidify these beautiful connections with fans. So touring, again, that's the old story. We all hear it. You make fans on the road, right? That worked really well for me. And the way that I release music is I don't release everything to digital streaming right away. So I release songs that have videos with them to streaming. And then the full album is only available in physical copy. And the reason why I do that is because we live in a highly, people will saw through a record, half listening to songs in, 40 minutes, and then they're done with a record that might have taken you a year to make. And I remember what it was like being a kid waiting in line to get a CD and hold it in my hands and go home. And I would open up the book and I would fold it out to see all the artwork in there. And I would listen to song one in headphones, reading the lyrics as I went along each single song and then into the next one. And I let that record take me to whatever world they were trying to take me to. And I just was all the way in. And that's always how I've loved to digest music. And, so I wanted that to be the same with mine. I didn't want you to just be able to put it on and in the background and zip through it in an afternoon. I wanted it to be an experience. I wanted you to physically be able to hold something that I crafted in your hands. And I think that's gone now with digital albums. I don't know if I'll ever get to a point at one point, because it always tugs at me both ways. There's some people that are like, I don't have a CD player. I don't do this. I want to be able to listen to it on my phone. And I get it. And I hear those things. And I do get pulled in both directions because obviously I want the songs accessible to everyone. It's not about depriving anybody of the music or holding on to it or hoarding it. It's more about, for me, it's about completion of art and physically being able to go, this started here and now I'm holding it here and I'm holding it in my hands and I'm packing it myself and I'm signing it myself and I'm sending it to you. And all those things, I've touched it, I've smelled it, I've held it. It's lived in my home. It's lived in my head, and now it's going to your house. All those things are really important to me. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, because a lot of people would try to do it the way that I do it, and they wouldn't sell CDs. And I don't mean that in a rude way. It's just maybe their fan base isn't ready for it. Mine grew with that. When we were on the road, we are selling and signing CDs. So it's not foreign to them. So I've been fortunate enough to find some success in kind of a hybrid of old and new industry. I've just been really fortunate to spend a lot of time on the road, cultivating and growing relationships. I have people that have been to every single show I've been at. That people that I could remember being order number 3 on my website that I still talk to on this day. So I have a lot of, I do everything for the people that are part of this journey with me. I do everything I can to engage with them. And on this level, I try to be authentically me at all times, good, bad, or otherwise. And, that's worked for me.
Yeah.
People want honesty. They don't want a facade of what they think you are. If you're bummed out, man, you can be bummed out and show up, because people are like, holy shit, they're actually a human too. They're not a robot just posting the good times.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about booking tours, because you do all the aspects of you're the guy. You do all the things for your own career. So in terms of booking tours, like Canada versus US, how do you find shows? Who do you hire to do that for you? Or do you do everything yourself?
In the beginning, everything myself. So I, again, for America, I was lucky enough to tour with Thomas for all of those dates. So he has a booking agent in America who I've worked closely with for the last 4 years, who has a little boutique, agency in Los Angeles. So not a ton of artists on it, and kind of really handpicked and cultivated place, which is great, especially when, I know not everybody's experience is that sometimes their booking agent has 30 acts, and I can only imagine how hard that is. And for all of us that like to keep our hands in the soil and dirt, I would have a tough time being one of 30. So in the beginning, I cultivated whatever relationships I could. I went and played for 20 people, and then the next time there was 40. And kind of by doing that, or by people hearing your music first, someone would reach out and say, hey man, do you want to come play here? Or do you want to play there? And I would just try to piece it together and stitch it together. So I did a lot of that in Canada myself for years. But Canada's a different cookie than America is, because there's big, long distances in between places. And I think the pendulum swing, for Canadians finding Canadian content is backwards. Most of my fan base is in America. And now the pendulum's starting to swing back the other way, and people are being like, oh, this American artist, Brandon Hart's really cool. And then they circle back and they're like, oh, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. They're like, oh shit. He's Canadian. And actually he's been in our backyard this whole time. So I think for Canadian artists, it's really difficult to tour Canada. Which is crazy. That doesn't sound like it. And then for those of people that are listening that may only be Canadian and they've never toured America, touring America is completely different because it's such a massive country. And
things are closer together. There's so many
together, like
in a smaller landmass.
California every 3 months.
Yeah.
And you could still be hitting different pockets. You know what I mean? So America is a completely different beast to tour it. And I've been lucky enough to do the country 4 times over, I think. I think the only states we haven't played are like Alaska and, maybe New Mexico or something. But I think for the most part, we've played everywhere else, and like several times. And so in the beginning, it was that, and Tom's booking agent for there. And then I worked really closely. I helped advance all those shows. I just do my absolute best. I'm all in. If I do anything, I'm all the way all in, and there's no job I'm not willing to do. Yeah. And I think that's something that's really important for young artists. I think perception for artists is a very, scary thing because they want to be perceived as something bigger on social media or whatever. And they're afraid to show the process, but the process is really where it's all born.
Mm-hmm.
And, people don't believe that you just like upgraded to a mansion overnight. You know what I mean? They want to see you live in the double wide, and they want to see you get to the single rancher, and they want to see you get to the 4-bedroom house. They want to see that. You don't want to just see you in a mansion. What fun is that?
Well, and I think it makes, there's more relationship, built that way, because most of the people who make up a fan base for an artist, they didn't start out in the mansion. They started out in the double wide and moved up and, whatever. So it makes you relatable when you're showing the reality of your process. And I think your fans get to feel like they were the OGs.
They grew with you.
Yeah.
That's the win, right? That's the win. When people are crying because they saw you in a 50-person crowd and now it's a 200-person crowd and that you still remember them from that show.
Yeah.
That, is so special. That's more special than anything. For me, I've always said it's about, 1 million fans, not $1 million. And because helping those million people is way more important to me than $1 million will ever be.
Yeah.
Because you can't take money with you, but we can all take memories and thoughts and connections with us to our very last breath. And, that's what I've always cared the most about. So that's probably helped attribute to where I'm at with things to this day. But back to touring, DIY forever. So please let me play. Can I have 5 minutes? I'll load all the beer in the back door if you need it and stock your bar for you. If you'll give me 10 minutes to open for this person. Yes, I'll sell as many tickets as you want me to. And, I remember in the early days, you had to sell tickets. They'd make you sell like, I don't know. I think you had to sell like 50 tickets to get on the slot or something. And I would hustle, man. I would come back with anything for as long as I can remember. I've always hustled something. Like I used to print my own CDs, write my email address on them. And I would just have a backpack full of them and hand them out to people at parties. I would leave them at bus stops. I would sell them out of my backpack everywhere at high school. Just whatever I could possibly do to go, here's this. And I don't know, it might suck, but enjoy it for now. Cause I'm working on another one. And, I always translated that into trying to get as many tickets as possible. I remember playing shows when I was younger in Kelowna, that, I was the opener. And most of the crowd left when I left, we got a bigger crowd than the opener. So they thought they were going to have this huge show that we'd pack a bar and the, headliners. And this is I'm not being braggadocious or anything. I'm just saying I worked really hard at making myself memorable and trying to sell as many tickets as possible and eating shit for years to do so. And, I think that's it. I think a lot of people nowadays believe you just like show up and, hey, I made this song and I put it in the internet and now make me famous. And they don't realize that like you got to play 500,000. And, there's going to be times in your life where maybe those 5 people are only 50 and there's going to be times when they're 5,000 and that might fluctuate back and forth and both are equal important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So through all of that, I don't say long story short. I say long story long because I'm not very good at long story short. So long story long, I was fortunate enough after 4 years of working with the same booking agency that Tom is represented by, Malachi, who is the owner of a live agency in Los Angeles, saddled me with my very own booking agent last year named Jenna Becker. And she is amazing. She's fought tooth and nail for me all year for a tour that we had a tough time getting off the ground this year, just to kind of where the world's at still. But she's incredible and she's a hard worker and I'm very grateful to be represented by them and her. And, that's where I'm at now. Luckily, I now have a booking agent.
And I'm backtracking just a little bit, but
Sure.
you used the term a few minutes ago that you always helped advance the shows.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about, for people that don't know what that term means?
Sure. Advancing a show is you kind of go over everything that will happen the night of the show in advance with the promoter. So you contact them, you reach out, making sure that your sound check is still for the same time it's supposed to be. You make sure if there's any back end stuff that needs to be taken care of finance wise, you organize to make sure that's available, and it's going to be available for you on the night in advance. So you're just kind of, if you have a stage plot that you're rolling with, meaning there's certain connections that need to run into it, you need certain requirements to perform your show, you make sure you're advancing them that they have that in place like they should already. So you're just kind of going over the checklist of what'll happen at the show that night in advance. So basically establishing the connection with the venue, the promoter, the sound guy, whatever, and making sure everything's as it should be for the night.
And that's a really important step. And people who are touring with a bigger staff, I guess, but a bigger team, let's use that term, a bigger team, the road manager might do that element of it.
The tour manager.
Yep. But, it's an important step in playing live. So let's talk about the role of merch in the bottom line. So I'm not asking for like dollar figures, but I think it's important for people to know. So maybe we can talk about sort of percentages of the whole pie. That merch is actually quite a substantial part of an artist's income, right?
It is, if you can hustle it.
Yeah. And that's true whether you're signed to a label or not. So in your case, you just retain all your merch instead of having to share it with a label.
That's correct. I was going to say the difference is that I make more money than being on a label with it.
Yeah.
Merch is such an important, often overlooked thing by bands and musicians alike. And there's two steps to this thing that I think are really important. Again, this comes down to ego. I see a lot of artists sometimes on the road. I think they're kind of too cool for school. And now they played their show. They're not out there mingling. They want to live the green room life and have somebody else sell their t-shirts. And then they wonder why they make $80 a night in t-shirts. And, regardless of how much money I make at the merch table or not, the only place I want to be is at the merch table, because I want to thank each and every single person. I want to be available to take a photo with each and every person that just found me. I want to hear what they thought of the show. I want to hear about their life. I want to make that personal connection with them. I want to give them a hug. I want to sign whatever they want it signed. And I like being the first face you see and the last one you see when you leave somewhere, because that's a big part of who I am. And that's a big part of the start of our relationship together. So merch is really your opportunity to get to know the people that are actually there. It's like, it's often missed, and that's a great place to grow your newsletters, to grow anything. And also, it's not just about if someone's going to buy a shirt or not. It's about, is someone going to remember you or not? And even if you came and you had no money left and you didn't buy anything, I can't count how many times I've given someone a hat, a t-shirt, a CD, a hoodie, or whatever. But for years on the road, I've always carried stickers, and I've always carried pins and magnets that I've given away for free. And koozies and beer koozies, because people love them and they're often drinking out of a bottle or a can there. And I'm more than happy to do, hey, throw that on there. Also because they leave and it's going to be something that's in their pocket the next morning. They're going to wake up and be like, oh yeah, that guy was awesome. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
So, you can make good money at merch if you're there for the right reasons, doing the right things. If you want to just make one shirt that you don't care that much about, throw it up there and expect to get rich, then you will get what you put in. But for me, that is like that is the breeding ground of where I get to meet people and cultivate those relationships that ultimately turn into them being fans, right?
What I love, and I'm hearing a consistent thread from you throughout, is that you come to your music career, it sounds to me, the way people talk about, follow me through on this analogy. It's going to start off sounding weird.
Yeah.
But the way people talk about sales to start with is that sales isn't about sales. Sales is about building relationships. So that's just because that's a familiar analogy, but you come to your music career the same way. It's about music, but it's about music as a vehicle to create relationships, not the other way around.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. My, all my online stuff is a community. There's nothing about it that is like artist fans. It's like collective community built on, you're right. Music is the vehicle in which we all travel together, but it's not what we're talking about in the car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, and that's, for me, it couldn't be any other way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that gives your fans a pretty distinctive and authentic experience with you, because it is so apparent that is how you orient yourself, that you're not looking at them as a blank face with a dollar sign on top. You are looking at them as a relationship.
Yeah. As who are you? How can I get to know you, and how can we grow together?
Yeah.
That's what we're there for. We're there because we're both fans of music.
Yeah.
So what else do we have in common? Right. And that's really how I look at it. And I'm so fortunate to be able to do that, and to be able to have spent this much of my life doing this, is incredible. And, it's, to talk about the relationship thing when the pandemic hit and there wasn't touring anymore, to talk about the touring. I bought equipment and learned how to host Zoom concerts, and I've literally done one a month for the last 2 years, and they are so special. I sit and chat with people. Usually I play for 2 hours, and then I sit and talk with people for like 2.5. I'm on there for a long time. I answer every single person. I talk with every single person in there. I answer questions. I talk about their life, whatever. And, there's so many people that have written to me since I've done these and been like, I have a disability. There's no chance I would ever be able to go to a live concert. So to be able to watch you in my house is incredible. Or, maybe they have kids and financial issues. So to buy one ticket is $7. And if you've got everybody in the house, you can, and I've never changed the price on the ticket from the inception of it. Because it's not about making the money from it. It's about me getting on here and getting to spend time with all these people, and, getting to talk with them, and we all have something to look forward to. And I didn't want to lose that beautiful relationship that I have with people on the road. So I was like, how can I do this still when we're at home? And it's pretty easy if you can figure out, I saw a lot of people try and do it, and they got frustrated after, and they would give up, or they wanted to go so big, not realizing that, like, they don't want a light show. They just want to see you, man. They just want to vibe. They want to listen to your music, and they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Don't make that difficult. Just make it.
Don't make it weird, man. Don't make it weird.
Just show up. Show up for people. Truthfully, just show up.
Yeah.
And, I will continue doing some variation of this even when I get back out on the road, because there's fans all over the world that might never get to see a show otherwise. Or there's a lot of people with a lot of things that prohibit them from going to live concerts, and being able to give someone a night out but in is a beautiful thing. And, it's been great for my brain. It's been great for our community together. And it's something that, I don't ever want to stop doing. In the last concert, one of the gentlemen, who is the sweetest man on the planet, his name's Herb, he made me this beautiful sign for my house. Like my fans send me the most incredible things at all times. Such thoughtful human beings, I've just attracted such thoughtful people. And, he hadn't seen his mom in like a very long time. And he was able to buy her a ticket to the Zoom concert, and they saw each other on Zoom and they got to talk after. And his mom passed away 3 days after the concert. And he's like, if you didn't do this concert, I wouldn't have gotten to see my mom. And he's like, so don't ever stop doing these things. And you don't realize in these microcosms, pardon me, of what we do as musicians, these beautiful bridges that you're always connecting. You don't understand the life of which is around you. I didn't know that in that night, but for him to tell me and now know that, even if you didn't feel like playing, you show up, you do this, and you don't know what's happening in the background. All these people that come to these shows now have like online community friendships. They chat with one another. They check in. I see people on my page helping each other out when they're in jams. They don't just come to the page for the music. They're there to support one another. Someone's like, I'm having a tough day. 10 people are in there. What can I do? Let's talk. It's such a beautiful thing set in motion. And,
that's a really astounding. I mean, that gave me chills, that story, and made me tear up.
Yeah.
And I think it's just an amazing testament to who you are as an artist, because that goes top down, right? You set the vibe, and those ripples expand from you as the center of that community. But
sure,
that is the vibe, that it is so very much a community that you have fostered.
Absolutely.
I love that. And I know you do online concerts, which maybe you can talk in a second, just briefly a little bit about the tech for how you manage to make that work properly. But also you also do coffee chats, right? And are those different things? They
are. Yeah. I usually do morning, and I haven't done them recently just because my life's been incredibly busy. When we added baby number 2, there's a lot of things. And it's just been a really, really hectic year for me. But for the last 2 years consistently, I would do morning coffee with Brandon Hart, where I would just jump on Facebook Live. I'd be in there. I would just be chatting with people. Sometimes I often just go off talking about something similar like what we are doing today. And then the online concerts I've hosted through Zoom forever. So you buy the ticket from my website. I send out a link 24 hours prior to the concert. So if you're in a different time zone, you have time to figure it out. If it goes to your junk folder, you have time to message me, and I can get you back in. Cause I host and do everything myself. I send every single ticket myself. I do it all. And on the tech side of it, I just, mine is grown and it's very elaborate now. I run through my inner ears. I'm on a pack. For those of you that don't know what inner ears are, a pack are, it's a wireless inner ear monitor system. So it's the way you can listen to music when you're performing off of a wireless pack into headphones that are made specifically as inner ear monitors. And I run off of a wireless microphone too, which is both running into my system. However, they're very easily connected, and I run them all through my audio interface. And in Zoom, I just use my audio interface as the input. So my microphone and sound is all coming through my audio interface, just like we're doing right now today. Except the difference is my sound is coming through my AirPods, and my microphone is running through my audio interface.
Yeah,
that's it. And trial and error. There's been times where things didn't work right, and I learned how to do them better and better and better. And I spent a lot of time building out online sets too with, mashups of songs. And I try my absolute best to keep it really creative. And I also looked at it as like, what a great way to practice touring sets and see what worked and see what didn't, and see how I liked the flow. And it was a great way to keep my chops up too while not touring.
Yeah, Absolutely.
All the added bonuses of, staying on top of it.
Totally. Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.